What's up, everybody? It is Monday. It is a push, and we are back at it. All right, we're heading really and truly to the home stretch here. All right, we're going to be looking at AP classroom stuff this week. We're going to be looking at period 6 and 7 review this week, and some practice questions to get you used to the time and things like that. I'm also going to share some stuff from College Board throughout the week. Videos you can go back and watch a review and things of that nature. All right, so going to be a lot of options for you this week. It's going to be kind of a choose your adventure type deal, but just preparing yourself for that May the 15th date where you will be writing that 45-minute DBQ essay. All right, so we're going to continue to do things. Prepare for that so you're in the best position possible. This week's going to consist of, like I said, now I'm repeating myself, a lot of College Board stuff, AP classroom stuff, period 6 and 7 review, and then I've got something else I'm going to talk about here in a second. All right, so what I said I was going to do today was finish up that period 4 review. So I'm going to do that real quick. All right, talk through some of those things. If you want to, you can play it back. If there's something that doesn't make sense, make a note of it. Ask me a question about it. All right. So you can do that as well anytime you like. All right. So period 4 study guide, we're going to finish that up. Period 5 study guide is due today at the end of the day. All right. So make sure you get that into me. We'll start talking through that. Then I'll post the period 6, which will be due on, I think I said Wednesday. And then Friday will be, this time next week, you'll be done with these types of reviews that hopefully you'll have these filled out. You print these out. I mean, use them for the DBQ. All right. So yeah. All right. Period 4. Period 4 study guide. We left off with politics. I'm going to talk through some of these things. Turning point. It's in bold and all caps with an exclamation point. I believe I have to say it like that. All right. So sorry if I scared you there. If you are watching this early in the morning, that probably wasn't pleasant. If you're watching it this at any time of day, that probably wasn't pleasant. But anyway, turning point. First peaceful transition of power, political party switch. John Adams, elected president, loses the election, the next election to Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson becomes president. How's it going to go down? All right, in 1800, is there going to be blood on the streets? Is there going to be riots? Is there going to be revolution? Because one political power is out and another political party's power is in. The answer is none of that happens. It's a peaceful transition of that power. And so this is called the Revolution of 1800. So hopefully you remembered that from earlier in the year, the Revolution of 1800. So that is a big moment in our history. It set the precedent that if you lose an election, you will gracefully step aside and let the winning political party take over, or the winning person take over without blood on the streets, which is a very positive thing in our society. All right, so era of good feelings, one political party. The Federalists are gone by that time. We talked about the Hartford Convention last time. Election of 1824, corrupt bargain. John Quincy Adams becomes president following that disputed election where Henry Clay shifted his electoral votes to John Quincy Adams to make sure Andrew Jackson did not become president. This kind of ushers in the age of the common man. So common man, you got to understand, like when we're talking about this, it's the common man at this time period. It's still a pretty narrow definition of who the common man is. All right, so just be aware of that. Election of 1828, the rise of Jackson, the rise of the Whigs as a opposition party to Jackson. Andrew Jackson had very strong opinions. He was not afraid to share them. He was not afraid to wield his executive power, and a lot of people did not like that. So he just his presence kind of necessitates another political party. All right, which would be the Whigs, which are around to the 1850s. All right, so. Scrolling down here, the development of the two-party system. We are back to a two-party system in the election after the election of 1828 with the Whig Party. Women. So there's three things here about the role of women in this antebellum time period. All right, antebellum. Remember, before the war. Before what war? Before the Civil War. All right, so this period from 1800 to 1860 is going to be known as the antebellum time period. All right, so this first one, women's place was in the domestic sphere. That is going to be the cult of domesticity. All right, so early in our history, this is belief that all women should stay at home, working domestic and not go out and work. That's going to be the cult of domesticity. One of those blessed things where you can, if you know the root word of domesticity is domestic, which means home, you can easily get the understanding of what they're talking about there if you see that phrase. All right. Um, Women should raise good young citizens at home as part of this cult of domesticity. This is Republican motherhood. So these mothers would teach Republican values, not the political party Republican, but the government, like the United States values. All right. The idea is that all people are created equal and how to be a good citizen and all those things, be virtuous. All right. Be virtuous. So that is Republican motherhood. Excuse me. 1848 at the Seneca Falls Convention, the Declaration of Rights and Sentiments, written a lot like the Declaration of Independence, only declaring that all men and women are created equal. All right, so you see an early suffrage movement there. All right, wanting equal rights. African Americans pro-slavery arguments, racism in the North and the South. Their pro-slavery arguments, remember, it starts out as an economic necessity, and then by 1838, as the abolitionist movement rises and like William Lloyd Garrison gains traction with his newspaper, The Liberator, and people up north are starting to think maybe a little bit more and more that, hey, maybe this isn't okay. This is not okay. There's this reaction in the South where they said, you know what, it's not only an economic necessity, we're doing everybody a favor. This is a positive good for society. They use the Bible to defend that, and as wrongheaded as it all was, the argument in the South became that it was a positive good, led by John C. Calhoun. All right, so pro-slavery arguments, the divide between the North and the South, even though they both had their race issues, the divide between the North and the South grows. Native resistance met by forced removal. We talked about that on Friday's video with the Trail of Tears and Tippecanoe and all those things. All right. Sectionalism is going to be a big part of this. If this DBQ comes from this time period, there's a good chance sectionalism will come from it. All right. 1814 in the Hartford Convention, the North, New England Federalists considered possible secession. We talked about that last time. In the South, you had the nullification crisis. So going into 1832, it was 1-to-1 in threat of secession. You had the North, the New England states threatening secession with the Hartford Convention in 1814, which led to the destruction of the Federalist Party, and then 1828 and 1832, led by John C. Calhoun. South Carolina votes to nullify tariff laws that were hurting their bottom line, hurting their profits, hurting their economy. All right, while protecting New England industry. And so they said, you know what? We're just going to, any law that we think is unconstitutional or unfair, we're just going to ignore that. And so the Nullification Act became a thing. Jackson says, that's cool. Ignore it. I'm going to send my military down there. I'm going to bring your political leaders. I'm going to hang them from the highest tree that I could possibly find, just as a message. And that caused South Carolina to back down from that. So 2 secession crises avoided early on. All right, one by the North and one by the South. All right. Their differences, their core differences are in how their economies and how their economies develop differently, which is really based a lot on geography. In the South, it's more suited to large-scale agriculture, large-scale cotton plantations, things of that nature. All right, New England, you got Pennsylvania, which is like dairy and all those things. You got the Midwest, which is like food and grain, and they can grow all those things. But then a lot of areas for factory, a lot of the big commerce areas are in the North, and so they're going to develop a little bit differently, where slavery doesn't make as much sense for the North, and so they grow apart economically, they grow apart politically, and they grow apart culturally. All right, the North and the South throughout the antebellum time period up until the point of the Civil War, where the South secedes. John Marshall, Supreme Court actually increases the power of the federal government. John Marshall, aka the last Federalist, because he was in power till the 1830s. Is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in Marbury versus Madison. He rules in favor of judicial review. In McCulloch versus Maryland, the Second Bank of the U.S. is constitutional. And then Gibbons versus Ogden, The states do not regulate interstate commerce. The federal court does. All right. So that'll be a helpful section. If there's something about the Supreme Court or you need to mention a Supreme Court case in the DBQ, that'll be a helpful section to look at. So I would definitely have these printed out. If you can't print them out, have them somewhere handy while you're doing that DBQ. All right. Because we're going to have these for periods 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, which that should be helpful. All right. Next. African American communities, life under slavery, extended families, surrogate families. All right, because you'd be sold, and so like people would like the family ties would oftentimes be broken, even though they by law they weren't supposed to be. That you weren't supposed to separate a young child from their mother. It happened. All right, and so they looked to spirituals a lot as hope. All right, they used spirituals to give messages to each other about like the Underground Railroad. All right, importance of religion grows in those communities. That's really a larger part of the Second Great Awakening, and really opposition to slavery grows with the Second Great Awakening and the advent of the abolitionist movement. Slave resistance, once again, they did resist. All right, not always in an active way, but in a passive way, which led to these stereotypes of slaves being lazy and things like that. But they would sabotage, they would run away, they would slow things down because what's the incentive to work is like maximum efficiency. That your life is your life there. It's a slave. All right. There's no hope of like moving up a social ladder or being rewarded in any meaningful way for your work. All right. So slave resistance was oftentimes passive. A few times it was active. Denmark Vesey in 1822 gets betrayed before a slave rebellion begins. He's hung. And then Nat Turner in 1831 leads a rebellion in Virginia that actually leads into multiple deaths, all right, of slave families and whites. And this terrifies the rest of the slaveholding South. This terrifies Virginia. It leads to stricter slave codes being passed. And then the abolitionist movement, like we talked about, grows into the North. And we got the Underground Railroad Museum right across the river in Cincinnati there. There's a lot of areas along the Ohio River there, Ripley, Ohio, for instance, where there is these monuments to the Underground Railroad. All right, so that's local, a lot of local history in this as well. Free black population. There's a smaller free black population in the North and the South. There was this idea of colonization where you'd send freed slaves back to Africa. It's something that Lincoln looked at early in the Civil War, met with a congregation of African Americans to say, hey, would you be interested in this? And like, why would we go back to Africa? This is our home as well as it is yours. So it really didn't take off. But one state in Africa or one nation in Africa was founded. If you look at the flag, it's a lot like the United States flag for that reason, Liberia, as a result of this type of movement as well. All right. Identity of the South versus the identity of the North. So you should know this. Identity of the South, it's you got a very strict social system. You've got poor white or slaves, poor whites, all right, or like it talked in the book about poor white trash and hillbillies and things like that. So they own no slaves and they're just kind of living on a subsistence basis. All right. Then you've got a top class plantation class that holds all the power, all the political power, all the it's a little bit like feudal lords almost. All right. And then you've got a group below the plantation class of whites that own like one or two slaves or three or four slaves, and they have that dream of maybe someday coming into owning a large plantation. All right. It's very agriculturally based. The mountain whites, they are the exception to this. They did not really support slavery during the Civil War. They're not really going to support the Confederacy very much, and so there's a little bit of a difference there. But other than that, it was like I described earlier. Regional sectional identity of the North. You have very, very, very trade-based, factory-based textile mills. All right, large immigrant population, whereas the South did not have a large immigrant population. All right, so all those things are things that you should have put in with this section here. All right, if you need to add anything, feel free to do so. It's your thing. It's your study guide. All right, hopefully will help out. All right, so then there's these Jocks videos productions of big areas. of this time period, of this antebellum time period. Okay. So that's period 4. Period 5 will get turned in. We'll start going through that tomorrow. Period 6 won't be due till Wednesday, which I'll post today. Period 7 will be due on Monday. All right. And it's really going to be straight review from here on out. Okay. So, real quick, it is Motivational Monday. And Motivational Monday, this quote is from Inky Johnson. Got my phone here. Perspective drives performance every day of the week. All right. Your perspective drives your performance from every day of the week. I like that quote because it's kind of like, it's just a way of saying your attitude is going to impact how you perform. All right. If I come in the week with a bad attitude and I'm sick of this, I don't want to do anything, I'm not going to get much done. But if I see everything as an opportunity, and this is really what I try to do, is I try to see everything as an opportunity. And when you see it as that, it's like another thing to be conquered, another mindset to improve upon. It's another level to go up. All right. I'm always talking about leveling up. All right. So my perspective is I'm trying to level up every week. And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I go down a notch, and sometimes I succeed. I mostly try to succeed to keep leveling up, and that is driven by my perspective. All right. When you see everything as an opportunity and not an obligation, when you see opportunity instead of obligation, like I get to instead of I have to, I get to instead of I have to, when you get to the get to mindset, that's how everything becomes a lot easier. Everything becomes a lot more easier to, or how do I want to say this? Becomes a lot more obtainable, I guess, because it's an opportunity. I get to do this instead of, I gotta wake up and go through all this stuff, and he's gonna talk for 25 minutes again, blah blah blah. All right, so the opportunity versus the obligation. All right, so hopefully you see this as an opportunity to continue to level up in your own life. All right, so real quick, I want to talk about where is it? All right, this A Push Google Meet sign up, I'm going to repost the link to it. If you've got specific questions for me, all right, I've got them in like groups of 8 with different time periods. If none of these time periods are work for you, or there's like people signed up where you would like to you can't get in at the time you want, message me and make sure you communicate with me. We'll figure out another time to do it. I can be flexible with that, but I wanted to keep it to groups of 8 all week, just because no more than groups of 8 this week, just because I wanted to make sure I had a chance to answer everybody's question. I'll probably message you today if you sign up at the end of the day what your questions are going to be, just kind of so I kind of have an idea. Or if you don't have any questions and you're just saying what's up, that's fine too. But the Google sign up sheet is there. Google Meet sign up sheet. We're going to start that tomorrow. I'm hoping that'll be helpful to you guys. And that's for you guys. If you have any specific questions, let me know. Like I said, if those time periods or something doesn't work out there, I will work with you. Just contact me. All right, contact me. That's all I have on this Monday. All right, so have a great day. Need anything, let me know. Sign up for that Google Meet if you need to. I will see you later, and let's stop this. See you later. Stop.